The happiness you keep chasing might be the exact thing keeping you easy to steer, not a reward, a leash, and a soft one, which is the only kind that works on a person who thinks they're free. I want to be careful with this because it sounds cynical, and it isn't. There's nothing wrong with joy. But the pursuit of it, the way you've been taught to run it, as the goal, the point, the thing a good life is measured by, that pursuit has been quietly doing something to you. Stay, and you'll see why aiming your whole life at feeling good made you docile without you ever noticing, and what happiness actually was the entire time underneath the word they sold you. I chased it for years. I optimized everything for feeling good, the routines, the comforts, the little hits. And what I got at the end of all that optimizing wasn't joy. It was a kind of numbness with a smile painted over it. I'd confused being comfortable with being alive. Because there's a reason you were handed happiness is the point, as if it were obvious, as if it were kindness. And it was never entirely for your benefit. That's the part you're going to fight me on. One honest word before this: I don't make these to make you feel good, which, given the topic, would be a bad joke. I make them for the person who'd rather see clearly than be soothed. 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I take one comfortable lie apart. If that's you, subscribe and stay. And like this, if numbness with a smile landed a little too precisely. Now, the lie. Here's the belief you were raised inside, so completely you've probably never seen its edges. Happiness is the goal, the point of it all. The thing every choice is supposed to serve. Do the things that make you happy. Cut out what doesn't. If you're not happy, something is wrong with your job, your relationship, your mindset, you, and it's your responsibility to go fix it until the feeling comes back. And look at how total the machine around this belief is. An entire economy runs on it. Happiness is the promise behind almost everything sold to you. The product will make you happy, the trip, the upgrade, the app. There's a whole industry devoted to optimizing your mood, hacking your dopamine, curating your feed for maximum good feeling. Positivity isn't just encouraged. It's mandatory, and its absence is treated as a personal failing you owe the world an apology for. And I want to be fair, because this belief isn't stupid or evil. Wanting to feel good is the most natural thing there is. Nobody's lying to you on purpose here. Most people repeating "just be happy" mean it kindly. That's exactly why it's so hard to see the problem. The lie doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like common sense, like love, like the obvious thing a decent person would want for you. But this belief has 3 problems. Not 1, 3, and they stack. The first one, you'll accept easily. The second one, you'll recognize with a wince. And the third one decides something about your whole life, but you won't see it until you've walked through the first 2. So start with the crack that's easiest to see. The first problem is that the happiness you're actually chasing is almost never what you think it is. You call it happiness. But look closely at what you reach for when you want to be happy. And most of the time it's something narrower. It's pleasure, comfort, the absence of discomfort. A good feeling right now. And pleasure is a terrible thing to steer a life by. Not because pleasure is bad, because it's so easily supplied and so easily used to move you. Anything that can reliably give you a hit of good feeling can point you wherever it wants, because you'll walk toward the hit. Aldous Huxley saw this with frightening clarity almost a century ago. In his novel Brave New World, the population is kept perfectly docile by a drug called soma, a little pill that dissolves any bad feeling instantly, no calm down, no cost. Nobody's oppressed, everyone's content, and precisely because they're content, they never resist anything. They took their pleasure and handed over everything else without a fight. You don't need me to name the soma in your own life. You already felt it while I was describing it, the thing you reach for the instant a bad feeling shows up. And here's the part that got me. I spent years mistaking that reach for a life. I thought I was pursuing happiness. What I was actually doing was numbing, efficiently, on a schedule, and calling the numbness contentment. The better I got at feeling good on demand, the less of anything I actually felt. So chasing the good feeling was never going to make me happy. It just made me manageable. But that's only the surface. The second problem is worse, because it turns your own suffering against you. Here's the second problem. Once happiness becomes the goal, being unhappy stops being a normal part of a human life and becomes a defect, a malfunction, something to be ashamed of and to fix as fast as possible. Think about what that does. Sadness, grief, emptiness, anxiety, doubt. These aren't glitches. For most of human history, they were understood as information. Your grief is telling you something mattered and is gone. Your emptiness is telling you the way you're living doesn't feed you. Your anxiety is pointing at something unresolved. These feelings are messengers. They hurt on purpose, so you'll listen. But if happiness is mandatory, every one of those messengers gets treated as an error to delete. So you don't listen to them. You silence them. You reach for the soma, the scroll, the drink, the food, the purchase, the endless content, and you make the discomfort go quiet without ever once asking what it came to say. And I have to be careful here, because this is where it gets serious. Some suffering is genuine illness. Real depression, real anxiety disorders. Those are not messages to decode. They're conditions that deserve real treatment, sometimes medication, and there is no shame in that whatsoever. I'm not talking about that, and I won't have this mistaken for it. What I'm pointing at is the culture around it, the one that increasingly treats every ordinary, meaningful, necessary human ache as a symptom to be medicated or distracted away. Consider that in the United States, more than 1 in 10 adults now takes a prescription medication for depression. Some of that is people getting help they genuinely need, and that's good. But it's worth asking, honestly, how much of it is a whole civilization that has forgotten that some pain is not a disease? It's just the truth, arriving in the only language that gets through. So the second problem is that you've been taught to kill the messengers. But even that isn't the worst of it. There's a third reason the world wants you chasing happiness, and it's the one that's actually about power. Quick, honest pause. I'm not holding the worst part back. The leash, the reason this is actually about power, is next, and I won't gate it. You get the whole thing, but think about what this video is for a second. It's a piece of work telling you that your happiness is bait, and it has to survive inside the exact machine that sells the bait, a feed built to keep you comfortable and scrolling. It doesn't get pushed by that machine. It exists because people fund it directly, not an algorithm. If that's worth something to you, the Buy Me a Coffee link's in the description. Pay what you want or nothing and stay. Because once you see the reason they want you happy, you won't be able to look at the feed the same way again. Here's the third problem, the one the first two were feeding into. A person who is comfortable, entertained, and above all happy is a person who is easy to control. And a whole population like that is the easiest thing in the world to steer. Sit with the logic, because it's colder than it sounds. What makes someone hard to control? Discontent. Someone who feels the wrongness of things, who's uncomfortable enough to ask questions, to push, to refuse. That person is a problem for anyone who'd rather you stayed put. But someone who feels good, who's content, entertained, whose every ache gets soothed before it can sharpen into a question. That person doesn't resist anything. Why would they? Resistance is uncomfortable, and they've organized their entire life around not being uncomfortable. You will not fight for a freedom you are too comfortable to even notice you've lost. This is the exact thing Huxley was pointing at, and there's a critic named Neil Postman who made it razor sharp back in 1985 in a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. Postman said everyone worried about the wrong dystopia. We feared Orwell, the boot, the surveillance, control through pain and fear. But it was Huxley who got it right. We wouldn't be controlled by what we hate. We'd be controlled by what we love, not oppressed, entertained, not starved of information, drowned in so much triviality that we'd lose the capacity to care about anything that matters. The old tyranny needed a whip. The new one just needs to keep you comfortable, amused, and mildly happy forever. Postman was writing about television. Look at the thing in your hand and tell me he was wrong. So the happiness isn't the reward at the end of the game. It's the bait on the hook. The bright, pleasant little lure that keeps you exactly where you are, mouth around it, calling it a good life. So if happiness was never the real goal, then what is? And what were you supposed to be aiming at the whole time instead? Here's the true version. And Huxley put it right at the center of his nightmare, in a single trade. In Brave New World, the people didn't just take the soma. They made an exchange for it, and Huxley is very precise about what got traded away. To keep the stability and the happiness, they gave up art. They gave up real love, the kind that can hurt you. They gave up science that asks dangerous questions. They gave up truth. Everything difficult, everything deep, everything that could cause pain, all of it went in exchange for a guaranteed, frictionless contentment. And that's the actual insight, the one hiding under the whole book. Happiness was never meant to be the goal. It's a byproduct. It's what sometimes happens on the way to a life spent on things that matter. The moment you make the byproduct the target, the moment you aim directly at feeling good, you have to start trading away everything that feeling good was supposed to be a side effect of. You trade the meaning for the mood. And a person living for the mood is, by definition, steerable. I made a whole video on the lie we've been told about freedom, how we trade it away for comfort and call the cage a choice. This is that same bargain, one layer deeper. There, you gave up your freedom to feel safe. Here, you give up your meaning to feel good. Same trade. Softer word. And in both cases, the thing you handed over was the exact thing that would have made you hard to own. So the opposite of the bait was never misery. Nobody's asking you to go be sad on purpose. The opposite of chasing happiness is something almost no one aims at anymore, and it's harder to want than it should be. You stop aiming at feeling good, and you start aiming at what's true and meaningful, even when it's uncomfortable. That's the whole reversal. You demote happiness from the goal to the occasional side effect it was always supposed to be, and you promote something else into the center. A life that's worth living, whether or not it feels good on a given day. Here's the test that clarifies everything, and it's a strange one. Stop asking what would make me happy, and start asking what would I be willing to suffer for, because that second question points at something real. Almost everything that ever gave a human life weight required suffering. Raising a child, building something that lasts, loving a person all the way through the hard parts, standing for something when it costs you. None of that optimizes for comfort. All of it hurts, regularly. And all of it is worth more than any amount of frictionless pleasure, because it's yours, and it means something, and no one can steer you with a bribe when you're already carrying something you'd bleed for. That's the reframe. A meaningful life isn't a comfortable one. It's often the opposite, more stress, more risk, more nights that ache. But it has a floor under it that a pleasant life never has. Because when you're aimed at meaning, the bad days aren't failures. They're just the cost of caring about something real. And a person who has made peace with paying that cost cannot be baited. There's no lure bright enough. You already swallowed the only hook that matters, a life you'd choose again, hard parts included. So what does that actually look like on an ordinary Tuesday, when there's no grand meaning available and you just feel bad? It's smaller than the word meaning makes it sound, and it starts in the most ordinary moment you have, the next time you feel bad. Because that's the hinge. A bad feeling shows up, the flat Sunday, the unease after a conversation, the hollow at the end of the day, and you have a fork. The trained move is to medicate it. Pick up the phone, open the fridge, buy the thing, put on something loud enough to drown it. The other move, the one almost no one makes, is to just sit in it for a minute. Not to wallow, to read it. To treat the feeling as a message and ask, plainly, what is this telling me? What's it pointing at? You'd be amazed what an emptiness will say if you let it stay in the room for 60 seconds instead of killing it on arrival. It looks like doing one meaningful thing that you know won't feel good. The hard conversation over the pleasant silence. The work that matters over the work that's easy. Calling the friend in the hospital when everything in you wants to send a text and hide. You're not choosing the unpleasant thing because pain is virtuous. It isn't. You're choosing it because it's real, and you're practicing being a person who can bear real over a person who only reaches for smooth. And it looks like catching the phrase, "I just want to be happy." It sounds so innocent. But listen to it the next time it comes out of you and ask what you actually mean. Because a lot of the time, "I just want to be happy" is really "I just want to stop feeling this." And those are very different sentences. One is a longing. The other is an exit. None of this is a program, and if you turn it into one, a meaning routine, a suffering schedule, you've missed it. It's a test you run in the moment. But don't expect it to feel good, especially at first. That's sort of the entire point. Let me put it in one hard year. Two people, each handed the same kind of terrible year. A loss, a rupture, the floor coming out. Watch what they do with the pain, because it's the whole video in two lives. The first one treats the pain exactly as they were trained to, as a malfunction to fix. So they optimize. They stay busy, stay positive, keep the schedule full so there's no quiet for the grief to speak in. They numb where they can, a little more wine, a lot more scrolling, a self-help book about resilience they read on the surface and never let touch them. They say "I'm doing okay," staying positive to everyone who asks, and they mean it as a victory. And a year later, the pain hasn't gone anywhere. It's just been pushed underground, where it turns into a flat, low static that never lifts. They survived it without letting it mean anything. And so it meant nothing, except more numbness. The second one has the same unbearable year, and does the thing that looks, from the outside, like weakness. They let it in. They sit in the grief instead of outrunning it. They let it be as bad as it actually is, and they ask it, over and over, what it's here to teach them, about what they valued, about how they were living, about what has to change. It's a worse year to live through, in the moment. More tears, more darkness, no clean positive spin. But they come out the other side as someone. Deeper. Clearer. Carrying the loss instead of hiding from it, and somehow more alive for having felt all of it. Same pain. Same year. One of them medicated it, and one of them let it become meaning. Only one of them refused the bait. But before you turn that into a tidy lesson and go romanticize your own suffering, there's a line I have to draw hard. Here's the line, because this idea curdles in two dangerous ways, and I've seen both. The first is turning it into a cult of suffering. You hear meaning over happiness, and you swing all the way to the other pole. You start treating misery itself as proof of depth. You romanticize your own pain, wear your unhappiness like a badge, look down on people who seem content as if they're shallow sheep. That's not what any of this is. That's just the same ego trap flipped over, the bait swapped for a hair shirt. Suffering isn't virtuous. Meaning is. And plenty of meaningful lives contain real joy. The point was never to reject happiness, it was to stop steering by it. If you've made your misery a personality, you've missed it as completely as the person chasing pleasure did. And the second failure is more serious, so I'll be plain. None of this applies to clinical depression. If you are in the kind of darkness where nothing means anything, where you can't function, where the messengers aren't bringing information because the whole signal is broken, that is not a philosophical problem, and find meaning in your suffering is not the answer. That's an illness, it deserves real help, sometimes medication, and reaching for that help is not taking the bait. It's one of the bravest, most clear-eyed things a person can do. Do not let anything I've said tonight talk you out of it. I'm describing a cultural lie about ordinary pain. I am not describing your depression, and I would never. So keep the honest cost in view. A meaningful life is not a happier life. It's often harder, more stress, more grief, more skin in the game. What it gives you isn't comfort, it's a reason. And here's what I'd actually leave you with. It isn't a technique. So I'm not going to hand you a plan to live a meaningful life. A 10-step system for meaning would be its own kind of soma, one more comfortable product to consume so you can feel like you did something without the discomfort of actually doing it. One thing. Tonight, or the next time a bad feeling shows up and your hand starts moving toward the phone before you've even decided to reach for it, stop for 1 minute. Don't fix it. Don't medicate it. Just name the feeling plainly and ask it a single question. What are you trying to tell me? Not, how do I make you go away? What are you here to say? The emptiness, the restlessness, the ache you've been drowning in content for years, give it 60 seconds of your actual attention and listen to what it's been trying to get through the noise this whole time. You might not like the answer. It might tell you something about your life that a well-optimized, comfortable existence has been very effectively keeping you from hearing. That's the risk. That's also the entire point. You don't have to fix anything tonight. You don't even have to be happy. That was never the assignment. You just have to stop mistaking the absence of discomfort for a life. The bright little feeling on the hook was never the reward. You already knew that. Somewhere under all the noise, you've felt the numbness behind the smile, and you've called it fine. So here's the only question left. Are you going to keep biting? Because biting is comfortable and the water is warm. Or are you finally going to feel the hook in your mouth and decide you'd rather be free and aching than fed and owned? Remember the hook from the start, the bright little bait and the warm water? You've been biting it a long time, and I'm not going to pretend one video pulls it out of your mouth. It doesn't work like that. But here's where a few of us stop pretending together. In the comments, name the feeling you medicate the most, the specific one you reach for the phone to avoid. The boredom, the loneliness, the low hum of it's not enough. Just name it. Writing it down is the first time you've looked at it instead of drowning it, and reading a whole wall of other people's is its own strange relief. Proof that the smile over numbness was never just you. It was all of us, fed the same bait. Send this to the person who just wants to be happy and can't seem to say why they're not, gently. They're not ready to hear it as an attack, but they might hear it as a door. And if you want work that refuses to sedate you just to keep you watching, the opposite of the machine, funded by people instead of an algorithm, the link's in the description. Not charity. Fuel for something that stays awake. I'll be here Friday.